Board of Review at a virtual special meeting tonight. So Michael, if you'd call the roll.
Okay. Member Dittmer.
Here.
Member Kerouac.
Here.
Member Dahlman.
Here.
And Member Waymeyer.
Here.
And Chair Hunter.
Here.
And Member Callahan is absent. So we have 5, we have a quorum.
All right, good. So apparently we have no non-agenda people in the audience and want to speak their piece for a while. Is that right, Mike?
Right, no one here for anything that's not on the agenda.
Okay, then let's go move on to the sign permit application. Consideration of sign permit application and sign code exemptions for 105 Albrecht Drive. Eric is there somewhere?
Hi.
Okay. So where are you, Eric?
Yes, we came back after our discussion a couple weeks ago and came back with a revised banner, which is on page, I guess, 7. We took off the names. We just said available. We've got a phone number, and then we show the placement, which we've shortened the length or the height of it, I guess, is 5 feet, but the width of it got a little wider.
Okay. All right, people, what do you think?
What was the original submittal length of banner?
12 feet, I think.
I think it was like 84 inches by, sorry, just closing the door. Let me see if I can find it on here.
I want to say it was 144 inches. That's what I
Yeah, like it was like 86 by 44 maybe.
Yeah, so it was like 7 by 12.
Yeah, sounds right. It was more of a square. This is more of a longer rectangle. Trying to take account for that window line that you guys mentioned, so we can match it up with the bottom of that.
In order to approve this, you have to show, something that large and that tall that exceeds the code that much. You have to show a hardship, and I'm wondering what hardship there would be.
No, I don't think there's any hardship. I'm just trying to show a retail user what the potential signage could be. That's it. And if you guys want a retail user there, the signage should kind of show that. But I also understand, it's not your average size sign here.
How big are the letters actually?
I gotta imagine it's 5 feet total, so maybe 18 inches. The goal is to be able to see it from the parking lot, and when you enter the Target complex shopping center, if it's not visible and doesn't show much, I mean, the goal is so you can see it visibly, to give somebody that idea that it could be a retail spot.
Well, I have another alternative that I wonder if you might have considered.
Okay.
North of the building, before you get to where the bike path is, there's a triangular piece of ground there that's elevated about 4 feet, and that's part of the property. The property line is actually parallel to the bike path, and that there's a berm on there that's about 4 feet high. And if you were to put in a sign that complied with the code, you could be 10 feet above the ground in the top. If you were on the top of the berm, that would mean the top of your sign is 14 feet high. And if you were to put a code compliant sign that would be, say, 4 feet by 8 feet, that's 32 square feet. You wouldn't even need approval from us or from the village board.
Okay. We already have a sign at the front of the building where the entrance is. So we'd have to probably shrink, either remove that one or we'd have to figure something out because we have a sign that's been agreed to for that location.
I guess I should rephrase what I just said. I said you wouldn't need a requirement. I guess you would because the code only allows, I think it only allows one sign.
Yeah.
But in that case, if we had to vote for 2 signs, I'd be in favor of 2 signs who each were compliant rather than one giant one and a small one.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I feel that this kind of got away from us a little bit. I think we're trying to be, I think, sympathetic to your needs. I think this one may kind of go beyond our amount of sympathy, you know, to put it awkwardly. It just
No, that's fine.
and
I get it. I mean, there comes a point where it's just not even worth putting a little banner up there if you're not going to be able to see it. So we're stretched. Get it?
Yeah, I understand and sympathize with your plight here. This is a big ask after what we were looking at before. And I don't know if there's if we compromise going with Neil's direction, or Mike, if they were doing a sign on the building, is this what would be allowed? Is it simply because it's a for sale sign that we're asking for this exemption?
Right, I have not reviewed exactly the square footage that they would be allowed by right if it were a permanent sign, but they would certainly be allowed a larger sign as a permanent sign. It's based on the width of the building, a percentage.
Right.
These days. So it's certainly possible that it could come to this big allowable.
Right. Eric, do you know if your sign company, if they looked at that and this represents what you could do without asking for an exemption?
No, although it is pretty similar to the kind of signage that's on the building, the liquid control. So I can't say that for sure. I mean, that's what we're obviously trying to replicate is if there was a retail user, kind of what the size of their signage would be. We're trying to, that's what we're going for. And if we can't get there, we can't get there. I get that too, but just trying to market it a little bit more to the retail group versus the industrial user.
Right. Well, we've run into situations where a landlord has said something to a tenant and they've come in because the landlord promised them like, oh, you can have this, and then they can't without some kind of exemption. So I would just be careful portraying this as, if a potential tenant comes to you and you can say, well, this is a sign you can have. They come to us and we say, no, that's not the size you can have. I think that's an issue that we may have with this submittal without knowing what truly.
If I could duplicate this exact thing, Cushman Wakefield available, phone number, in the size that would be allowable, would that make you feel better?
It would make me feel better. I don't know about the others, but I think at least there's some precedence for why that sign is that size. And then we would have to look at, the 6 month, right? This is a 6 month. Isn't that where we go for sale signs?
Yeah.
Correct. There's a 6 month provision in there. Eric, do you know what the length of the front facade of the building is by any chance?
Give me 2 minutes and I can probably tell you. Just gotta pull up my, sorry, hear my kids screaming in the background. Hang with me.
Okay.
So the front of the building that fronts Albrecht is 300 feet.
200 feet?
300.
300, wow, okay. Yeah, so our sign code, if one tenant moves in and does a wall sign, our sign code allows 1 square foot of sign area for each linear foot of the front of the building. So this would be a compliant sign if it were for a tenant, a permanent sign for a tenant.
Okay. Well, that,
Actually, 370. Sorry, so it's a little bigger.
Yeah, okay, wow.
that makes me feel a little bit better about where we are. I know it's still an ask from a temporary for sale sign, but at least it gives us a little bit of framework to work within.
Something else I'm highly concerned about on this is the precedent that it would set.
There's not that many industrial buildings that look over onto the Target parking lot, though. I mean, that's the gist of it. Is you've got all these cars, all this traffic going into this retail center and trying to capture that user that this could be associated more with the Target center than the industrial park.
I certainly agree with that and hope it works. But I could also see if we allow this big of a temporary sign with that many variances, the height as well as the square foot on the for sale sign or for rent sign, I could see us having all kinds of people coming in wanting an exemption like this.
Julie, Cherie, what do you folks think?
Yeah, I'll have to agree with Neil and Matt. I think that the square footage is much too large. I also understand what you're trying to accomplish, and I think it's a good plan. However, it's we have allowed temporary real estate signs to be 32 square feet because they're temporary real estate signs, and so one to go that much larger because we're not approving exactly what it looks like and what it's presenting for those 6 months. And so we all have to look at it for those 6 months, and to have it be the smaller size is for a reason. So I'm not comfortable approving, definitely not a sign this large. I like Neil's idea of potentially having a smaller sign and capturing something, but also understand what you're saying about how it'd be difficult to read and it's almost not worth it if it's too small. You're lucky that you have overlooked that Target parking lot. A lot of people don't have the advantage of having a building that faces that. And just because that's the case doesn't mean you have that visibility of the building being there and people seeing the available sign if they're in the market to try to get in there. So I'm not comfortable with the size of the sign either.
Cherie?
I think the idea of doing the sign out on that little mound by the bike path is a good one.
So I just, the thing that bothers me about the sign from the get-go is the message. From what Eric's saying, you're pushing for the potential of a retail property, and yet it doesn't really say anything about that. And what just popped into my mind now, if anybody is old enough to remember the Burma Shave signs when you went down Route 66, and what they were is a whole series of little green signs, and they all had a sign that was generally pretty funny, and you got the last one and it said Burma Shave. Anyway, if you did a series of smaller signs that talked about potential retail space, Cushman Wakefield, I'm just kind of walking down, making stuff up, and march them up the hill that was talked about. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. It's just a thought, and break it up, and maybe it does exceed the 32 square feet in total, and it's big enough that you can see it, but it doesn't have to be, 21 feet long. I think 21 feet long is just kind of over the top. Actually, the whole thing is over the top, and yet it doesn't mention the potential of retail.
Well, and also for a large piece of property like this, it's not unusual for it to take longer than 6 months, to find a tenant.
True. All right, guys, I appreciate it.
So I don't know what we're telling you right now.
I mean,
Other than it's
I mean-
too big.
Tell me, stick with your sign by the building. We're good. I get it. But I appreciate the effort.
But I wonder if you need, I do think that for a building this big, you do need 2 signs, but to get that, as I understand it, you need village board approval.
Yeah.
Correct.
I wonder if you could go to the village board next week anyway and request approval for 2 signs and just acknowledge to them that they're gonna fit the code of not higher than 10 feet and not bigger than 32 square feet.
Well,
Okay.
Neil, I think the best way to get to that, if that's the direction you think we should go, would be for the ABR to make a recommendation that the village board approve of an exemption for 2 signs on the condition that the size of the sign comply with the code requirements, the size and height.
Yeah, actually, the size of each sign could be 32 square feet. So, also moved.
Second.
Second?
And there was Sheree with the second?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? You want to take a roll call vote, Mike?
Okay, sure. Member Kerouac,
Aye.
Member Dittmer,
Aye.
Member Waymeyer,
Aye.
Member Dahlman,
Aye.
and Chair Hunter.
All right,
Okay, 5 ayes, the recommendation carries.
all right, should we amend that just to Neil's notion of the sign on the hill? Is that, or is that up to the petitioner here, wherever he wants to put it?
I'd leave that up to them.
I'm sorry, Neil, I didn't understand what you said.
I would agree with the second part of what Bob said and leave it up to the petitioner to decide where that second sign should go.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so it stands as we just voted on. Okay. That's it then, right?
Yep, that's it. You've made your recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Moving on to Streetscape.
Yes, so we have the village engineer, Jeff Hansen, on the line. I think he's going to start us off with a presentation on this one.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Mike, can you enable screen sharing for me, please?
Sure. Hang on, give me just a second here. Okay. Okay, you should have it now.
All right, so what you should be seeing, or will be seeing in a second here, is a schematic created by Tesca. That is what they created, I think, based off your comments in your last meeting. I was not at that meeting, but they may have interpreted correctly or incorrectly a few of your comments. But essentially, they put together a schematic and a cost estimate based on this drawing, with brick pavers, as you see in the reddish color areas. There's seat walls throughout these new sidewalk areas. The festoon lighting poles, 6 of them in this corner by Innovasi, a few down the street. Here at this mid-block crossing, another one here, and then some down at this bump out down by the community church. And it's a lovely plan. It just probably is a little more than we have budgeted for it, or it is more than we have budgeted. So what I've been trying to do is take their cost estimate and kind of strip it back down to a base model. And I've talked with Jody Mariano from Tesca about what she felt was important in this plan. And I think we're hoping to get your feedback tonight as to what you feel is important, and little help in prioritizing what we need, what we want, and what we don't need. So I took a hack at trying to strip this all back down to more of a base project. You know, this originated as a street resurfacing project, so those costs are a little bit non-negotiable. We need to redo the asphalt. There's some broken curb in here and some broken sidewalks. We want to redo this corner based on that existing dancer area just being a bad use of our crosswalk, dumping you into a planter area. We have this lighting on here. So we went through the costs from Tesca, and the first thing we looked at was all these areas of brick pavers. Those brick pavers, you'll see in the cost estimate, were $140,000 in their estimate. To replace them with regular sidewalk would cut about $100,000 off of that. And we have discussed internally about having a joint and a score pattern in the sidewalk in those areas. And that was probably the biggest cut, the first cut that we thought we could make. The other thing was in the cost estimate from Tesca, it basically involved replacing all the sidewalk and all the curb in Scranton, as well as this sidewalk here along Center. So we reduced some of those quantities to reflect only replacing the cracked and broken pieces, and then obviously full replacement in these areas where we're changing the geometry of the street with these bump outs. So that was a significant cost savings as well. The other major thing that we looked at doing that's different than this plan was removing some of these festoon lighting poles. These ones coming off the buildings, 1, 2, 3, and then 4. These poles were estimated about $14,000 a piece. So those 4 poles, we also looked at maybe not doing these here down by the community church, and those could potentially be added later. They're in grassed areas. We could run the power to that area, which we kind of will be doing anyway because we need to put new power to our streetlights. And then we also looked at these 2 poles right here and thought we could maybe approach the building owners about putting those lights attached to the buildings rather than spending the $28,000 on these 2 poles. If the business and the building owners want the lighting there, we thought perhaps they could allow the lighting to be attached. So that's 10 poles I just talked about removing. That's another $140,000 out. And then the other thing, there's some details on here about planter pots in these landscape areas that we never really had a full landscape plan done, but there was about $75,000 in the cost estimate for landscaping. We had 2 concerns with that. One is, there's maintenance issues putting these planter pots out here. The other is we are a little sensitive to overdoing this block and making the other blocks kind of want the same treatment immediately. So by reducing, at least in the budget, the number of plantings, that cut off like another $40,000. So I think Mike distributed this spreadsheet to you earlier today. I've made 2 changes since then. I took Tesca's logo off. They requested that because we've modified what they sent us. And I numbered the items because I think that column was blank on the earlier one. On this sheet, I tried to bold. It doesn't show up extremely bold, but the ones that were changed quite a bit. So I lowered the curb and gutter removal by saving some of the curb that's not in bad shape. The new curb and gutter went down a little bit as well because we lowered the removals. Less sidewalk removals. The sidewalk replacing it is a little higher than you would think because where they had shown bricks, now we're going to go to sidewalks. That's item 4. Item 7 was zeroed. Like I said, where they were going to put in brick pavers, but we now just are estimating sidewalk. The seat wall and the curved benches are still here. That's certainly up for your discussion. I guess I'd love your input on how you feel about those and if they are absolutely necessary or kind of an indulgence. The light poles, you see here, we went from 18 to 8. Bike racks, I took the cost off because we have a separate budget for bike racks. And I left the trash cans, the recycling, the planter pots I took out. And then I just took all of these other landscaping items and put them at 50% of what they had. And then down here, some other costs that she didn't originally have in the asphalt. Our street poles need new wiring to them. If we do the mid-block crossing, we have to relocate some storm inlets, and then trying to help out the drainage in front of the Clockworks and the other door are those numbers towards the bottom. So I kind of went through that very quickly, but I'm very interested in your input and your questions as far as what you value in this plan and what you feel is more of an option.
Who wants to start?
I guess I can start. I think the direction we're looking at is really great. I think it's been refined nicely. The one thing I have, which I don't know how politically correct this is, but the lighting, the festoon lighting at Innovasi will end up being only for Innovasi patrons. So it seems I don't know if there's some kind of money to be, because they're definitely highlighting that corner for him, for Innovasi. And it's not really a public space. It's definitely going to be his outdoor eating space.
So
I think we just need to think about what that means.
So Matt, one thing we were potentially thinking about in that regard is to maybe do some festoon lighting out at the Village Green or over at the train station or over in front of the library, to make it kind of a theme through downtown in selected spots in the future. Right. Yeah.
I think it's the right corner to do it. It's just, I know that it's not going to be used by the public. It's going to be used by, patrons of Innovasi. I think it does anchor the corner, so I think that's lovely. But it's a shame that the focus is going to be, it's not going to have people gathering there besides people sitting for dinner or drinks, which I do. It's nothing wrong with that, but it's just something to kind of look at is like, are we doing it for the public or private? And this seems to kind of balance between the two. And I love the idea, of course, of using those lighting in other public areas. And then the other question is this creating this mid crossing walk, which I think is good. I do see some potential if we don't create some kind of like signage there or something where people feel like they can just cross there. Like the corners, people don't expect people just to cross that midpoint without abiding by the traffic. So I'm sure that's been discussed, but I would just want to put that out there that I think something needs to be addressed there also. But it is a natural walk, and I like the idea. I just want to make sure that we designate that as one of those walks where pedestrians either have a right of way or get clear on that.
Okay, yeah, there is some simple signage that can be done. We also are trying to get, right now there's like a half a crosswalk and there's parked cars on both sides of you. So we're trying to move the parked cars a little further away to make it more obvious. But I guess I do see with the vegetation there and depending what the landscaping is, that could certainly shield pedestrians from drivers and they won't see them.
Yeah, I do. It's a great idea, and I think it's lovely. We just want to make sure that some people put their faith that people are going to stop their cars, and sometimes a situation like this they may not.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Well, I have a couple of comments, I guess. When it comes to the pavers only at the mid-block crossing and having only that area, why that area instead of one of the corners or someplace else?
So maybe I went a little, it was a little unclear. The pavers we eliminated. Now these are shown in this drawing. This was produced before we tried to trim back the costs. We're kind of shooting for about a $500,000 project. So that would just be plain sidewalk. The stuff you see in Scranton Alley here would remain as is, but this would be just newly poured sidewalk with some kind of a jointed pattern in it to offset this area from the rest.
So there would be no pavers then anywhere? We'd only have the scored concrete, or would there be pavers somewhere only in Scranton Alley?
Well, in Scranton Alley where they are now, they would remain. What I've just what I tried to present was something that would have no additional pavers. It would all just be concrete in the right of way.
Okay, understood. And then when it comes to replacing and removing concrete, only the cracked and broken areas, is there a concern regarding how that's going to look to have it be, new concrete, old concrete, new concrete, old concrete, where it's going to just kind of defeat the purpose of everything we're trying to accomplish here and have it just be old and new the way that the regular sidewalk does? I'm very fearful that that's not going to look good at all. And I don't know if that's where, that savings, I realize it is the $37,000 according to the original budget, but it just seems as though it might be not money well spent to have all of the improvements that we're going to have not shine through because everyone's looking at where the sidewalk is old and then new. So that's another comment on that. When it comes to the festoon lighting, I think when we first talked about it, I wasn't, I said it's fine, but seeing the cost on it seems to be very expensive. I guess I didn't realize how expensive festoon lighting was. And I understand the idea of just having it be in one area, and I think it would be okay. However, if we do want to try to add festoon lighting later on, over at the Village Green or Kitty Corner or down the street, we're going to start running into the same thing where it's going to be a major impact on cost. So that's concerning that even if we save the money now, and maybe it is budgeted for later, I don't know if it's something where maybe that might give us a lot of money back in our budget by eliminating that, because that's a huge ticket item according to the original list here. And I think that those were my biggest concerns. I mean, I have other general thoughts about, some of the things that are on here, but I realized that that's not what we're here to discuss. It was really these other items. And when it comes to those items I mentioned, if you were to completely eliminate the festoon lighting, there would be additional monies that could be spent for the benches, which I do think could be important, perhaps including some of the paving, the pavers, because they do add something to, what's going on with the overall feel of when you're walking through. So those are a couple of my thoughts.
I think the most important thing that Julie mentioned, which is a big concern of mine, is no matter what we do with everything else, if we don't have a sidewalk that is consistent, we might as well not do any of this, because it'll just look like we forgot to do the sidewalk. Because you can see what it looks like now. I can see what it looks like in the sidewalks across the street from my house. It's white concrete. It's the old concrete. It's cracked concrete, and that's what we have up there. But I think we need to think about. I like what Matt said about the corner. I personally think we have overdone the festoon lighting. But what I really like is the idea of some of the shapes that are there. And instead of totally eliminating all the pavers, we outline the shapes with pavers, just a single roll-out course. It sort of doesn't have to go down the curb, but just, at the corners there. And when you get down to the Scranton Alley, I would just run those pavers out of Scranton Alley just at the width of the alley, period. And let the rest of the islands be the shape that it is, but it doesn't have to be all that paver. And then do the same thing on the other side of the street, just the width of the alley. And then take the crosswalk stripes and make them the width of the alley. So that's all one, it sort of reads as one piece. And then if you want to just put boundaries or a slight pattern in around the edges of some of these geometric forms at the corners, I think that would help. And maybe there's still some festoon lighting, just the V shapes that are going down the street. And then nobody is favorite. Nobody's got their favorite corner. If you walk around up there, pretty pleasant lighting level. We don't need to, put a Ferris wheel out there. And the other thing I do not like is the idea of festoon lighting in the Village Green. I think that it's a very serene place. If we wanted to put lighting, you can put, used to be a firm called Moonscape, and they made the lights without shining up into trees. You didn't see the lights, but it's like the moon was out. Something like that might be nice if you feel you need lighting up there. But I think to simplify some of this is a good approach, but to just do it sort of piecemeal is not going to work out. Somebody else.
I've got a comment about the crosswalk in the middle of the street. What's the draw to get people to go across the street? I mean, are we going to put that there and it's just going to be something to look at, or is it actually going to be used?
People cross the street everywhere. There's no,
Okay.
there's no rhyme or reason. It's you know, it's the islands that connects the two islands. If you don't want to put the crosswalk stripe in the street, that's
Okay,
fine.
I was just wondering, because it seems like you're making a statement that, oh, this is something to celebrate walking across the street, but it's nothing to draw anybody across the street, like Scranton Alley.
No, there isn't right now. You're right. You're right. It's sort of a gesture to the other side,
Okay,
but it's a very narrow one. It's the width of Scranton Alley, not
yes.
the width of the.
And I agree on your comments about the festoon lighting, that simpler is better. Attached to the building, I think is better than the corners.
I guess I agree that we should have the sidewalks continuous. And maybe to help pay for that is if we were to eliminate all the festoon lighting at this point, where they show as locations, if it ever became desirable in the future, they're going in where it would be landscaping or grass areas, and it may not be that difficulty to add them in the future if they ever became desirable again. But I would cut the festoon lighting out entirely and use that money to fix the curbs and sidewalks.
Should in that case, would the electrical be put there for future so you wouldn't have to tear something up?
That would have to be considered. We have to run new electrical conduit where the existing brick band of pavers are, because our street lights are on their last leg. We took a couple of weeks to fix one of them because we had an issue, I think, in front of the floatstone this winter and this spring. So our plan is when we tear up the old brick strip behind the curbs is to run new power down that way to each street light. And if we had to run them, I mean, that was going to go to, if there was the festoon lighting, to them at that time. So it could be stubbed out for future if that was the plan. I mean, there are a couple, I guess I've only seen one lighting post right by the door to Innovasi that would actually, definitely be in the sidewalk. Other than the ones, going down the street, the triangles out from the buildings and back.
I think in looking forward though, I agree with Matt. We're making an outdoor dining space specialized by Univasi, which is a great place. But it's even now the sidewalk is less public than it used to be, so if we don't think that should be that kind of lighting out there, we don't even need to plan for the future. I can count possibly 4 or 5 places where we could put the poles, which is the ones that come off the building. That I think would be enough, and that cuts out 9 of them right there at $14,000 a piece. So that's substantial. And just forget about this stuff at either end of the block.
Matt, you're muted.
Hey, Drew.
I was just saying, remember Kerouac was speaking, but I don't think he knew he's muted.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you. I guess I was agreeing with Bob. I think I like the idea of creating that rhythm down the street with the festoon lighting. I think that would, add something to that block and not highlight anything specifically, and kind of extend the life of the evening on those, on that street. And I can see maybe block 1 doing the same thing later on. And I think that's kind of a nice rhythm, down those 2 blocks. And if the other side gets developed to a certain point, I don't want to lose sight that I think those festoon lightings does create nice special moment on, you know, as you're walking through. It'd be nice to kind of not lose a little bit of what we're trying to do three-dimensionally, you know, versus just the sidewalk.
Chair Hunter, can I make a few comments?
Yeah, sure.
So at the last meeting, when this was discussed by the ABR, I think my recollection was that the ABR was very pleased with this plan, right? There was general consensus that this was a good plan. It was a good vision. And it was my understanding the ABR wanted to continue planning the balance of the central business district, acknowledging that the 2007 concept plan for the CBD streetscape was not going to serve the village well in the long run, and that it was appropriate to change direction on that, knowing what the experience that we had on Block 1 with the mixing of materials and the different movement and freeze thaw had created issues, and it just didn't live well, right? And had trip hazards, and never did the village consider that there would be so much activity in the central business district, and the outdoor dining would go so quickly within like 2 to 3 years of when that plan was approved. And right, the world changed, and the way the Lake Bluff.
Those were blank, empty office spaces when we did all of this.
Right. We don't, right. And I think that's the point. And I think member Dittmer was pointing out, you know, where is this sidewalk going? Well, we don't know, but it's going to go somewhere, right? That building right now is being marketed across the street. You know, the idea of you can't. I think it's difficult to build a plan around the existing tenants, and one must look at this as a broad brush and think about large, I guess, global objectives to improve pedestrian experience, improve the feel and ambiance of the community, and that the tenants will come and the tenants will want to be there, and the north side of the street will get populated over time, and the idea of creating new spaces for them and that are visually appealing. I think those are all the right objectives. And I'm afraid that the re-engineering that we've come to you with is going to result in an inferior product. I'm worried about that based off the comments I'm hearing tonight. So I guess I'm surprised at the direction of this conversation, given where we were last time. It just seems to be kind of making a 180. I guess let me focus on one thing at a time here. So the concrete, so I hear what you're saying about the idea of having, when you pour concrete and you're putting in it, it'll be somewhat of a patchwork quilt, right? It's different shades of different tones. I think that's almost like a necessary or unavoidable evil. I mean, we've learned that when we've patched Block 1, which was a very specific spec on how that was to appear based off the wash and exposing the aggregate. Chair Hunter, you and I sit out there and we work with the LA to get different looks. But then again, as soon as there's a natural gas break and they have to go back and, you know, repair it, it's different, right? I mean, it ends up being that quilt regardless. So I guess, but I'm not a designer. but the idea, the practical reality is that these things change. It's a dynamic environment we're living in, and so it's always changing. So that'd be number one. And I know, Chair Hunter, you made the comments about the pavers being, you know, reduced in size. I think when Jody put this together, I think this was a little more aggressive with the pavers than what you guys had given, the direction you had given her. But we didn't want to pay to have the drawing changed again, just knowing that, you know, I think staff's perspective was, if we can avoid mixing materials at all and just have all, you know, concrete in there versus any pavers, that would be a very, very quick cost saving. Jeff, what's the savings with that?
It was about $100,000. Just
yeah, that was a big ticket.
Pavers back to sidewalk.
And again, we've known, I mean, what's out there today, how the brick moves versus the concrete within the freeze thaw cycles, and same with the bluestone. Everything's moving at a different rate, and it's been a mess. But so that's kind of a maintenance hat perspective on that. And then the benches, that may be an idea, because I think, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, the seat benches within this plan, as shown in the preferred concept by Tesca, the village prepared base option, did it keep 100% of the seat bench?
I left that there's $50,000 for seat walls and $15,000 for benches. And I talked with Jody earlier today. So, those seat walls, you could just, put a bench on a poured concrete piece of sidewalk, like you see in a lot of other places. I don't know exactly how much that bench would cost. You're not going to save the whole $50,000. You have to put something back there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it. And she had I guess that was our conversation too. That's $65,000 there that I was also looking for some kind of idea of how important those things were to keep in or out. We may end up having to bid some things as alternates as well. If we get good bids, great, we can put in more things. If not, something might need to be the first thing to be cut.
Yeah. So, so the idea that those numbers really, you haven't changed those from the Tesca concept. So that could be whittled down to your point, whether we get great bids or not. But the idea would be to have some seat wall, right? I think based off the comments from the ABR last time. So,
yes.
I guess the next element, I didn't hear any heartburn from the members from the ABR about at least pausing on the planter pots. Was that heartburn for anybody?
No.
No. I think that got back to, member Kerouac's earlier comments of we're trying not to push too much down there and have some negative space would be good, right? And then as far as the planting materials, Jeff, I think you were kind of, give us your ideas about the plants in there.
Well, I'm an engineer. I'd plant grass, Drew. But,
the quantities you were dealing with.
Yeah, there were, I'll go back over here. She had 650 perennials, 310 shrubs. I think that is that'd be very hard for our public works crew to take over maintenance on something that thick, and I would imagine the expectation would be maintained very well. So that's probably an $8,000 to $10,000 annual maintenance contract with a landscape company to maintain something like that with those numbers and volumes of planting. So I just kind of cut those in half for purposes of our discussion tonight. But really, whatever we want to put in those landscape areas, it could be grass, they could be mulch beds with some spaced out plantings. Really could be about anything, but it seemed like that was quite a heavy amount of planting to put in a block like this, especially given that other blocks may want similar treatment in the future.
Yeah. And as member Kerouac, your comment about the festoon lighting, I understand that it's difficult to separate the tenant from the space, right? The public space. The village, yes, we do control who uses the public way and to what degree and how long, for what period of time. And I think the village has tried to be agreeable with tenants to use those spaces to create places, of like having what happens in the Prairie Alley in the private way also can happen in the public way. That's just interesting spaces for people to gather and build community. Today it's Innovasi. Who knows, maybe other door grows and takes over Innovasi 20 years from, who knows, right? Yeah, so it's difficult. Oh, you're still muted. I'm sorry. Member Kerouac, you're still muted. I'm sorry. I don't know if you can hear.
Sorry.
There
And
you
I
go.
said some amazing things that. And
I'm sure it was. Yeah.
And I agree with that. I know Scranton Alley definitely takes advantage of that public-private partnership. And I know this corner would too. It's just so we recognize that that's kind of what's going to happen here. And it's a lesser, because it's truly, just with that pattern, I see that like just glowing at night, that corner. And maybe there's a smaller version of what we have there. I just think maybe the scale of it may be a little much in terms of the amount of light that we're given. That it's just going to be if all the lumens are equal throughout the festoons, that's just going to be an incredibly bright area. It's a nice balance, and it is an important corner, right, for the village. I totally get that.
And I think it's difficult. What we're asking you to do is difficult. Not doing it in the context of the entire CBD, right? Because you're trying to wonder how all this connects
Right.
And how will we shake the hands with the train station, with the library? And I think it's hard. I get that. And I guess it's one of those things where this is one of those where it's timing is everything.
Yeah.
So apologies for the bad timing.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah.
Hey, can I ask one more question about the festoon lighting? When it comes to actually having them turned on, is there an issue at all with the second story tenants, especially where there's actually apartments, with people having to have that extra light coming into their spaces? And with the shut off time, I mean, I know part of what we've kind of talked about is that you can extend the time to be in town and it brings life to the town even a little bit later. But is there a shut off time that's going to be associated with that? Or is that something that has been discussed, or is there any concern from any of those tenants?
I've had one conversation with one tenant who said they don't anticipate it being a problem, but as far as Jeff, the practical ability to put it on a timer, I'm presuming that can be done, just like we have all the street lights on timers or on photocells.
Yes, that can be done, and we can talk with Jody if we need to about, the amount of lumens. They're not designed to give off a whole lot of light, I don't believe, individually. When you put that many up there, I can't exactly picture it in my head, but there are certainly design thoughts we can have to try to minimize any problems with the tenants.
I'm a little concerned that we're looking at all the add-ons and not looking at the base. We've got a good basic plan. The geometries of it, or what is seems to be working. It's what's necessary, and so that's a good place to start. It's just outlines, and then once you start to add the other things on, they are just that, they're additions, and we're not kind of prioritizing what the most important of those additions are. So I think rather than sort of randomly saying, well, let's light this corner, let's light this, that, or let's put some bricks over here, we need to think about what is the most important thing other than the base plan. And to me, I'm going to go back to the sidewalk itself. And then from there, what do we add on and so forth. So there's a list of priorities that, irregardless of what the cost is, that'll fall out later. That we should think about it, knowing that each one of these things has a cost parameter to it. The difference between a brick seat wall and a bench, the tubular benches that are all over everywhere now, is dramatic in terms of the appearance. Maybe not as far as comfort, but we're not here for comfort. Go home and sit on your couch.
Chair Hunter, I just want to mention, we did have one member of the public who joined the meeting at the beginning of this item, Mickey Callens, and she's entered some comments and a question on the Q&A, so I'll go ahead and read those to you. She says, the origin of this project was a desire to add parking spaces in the CBD. This design eliminates 5 spaces because of the mid-block crossing. Is the crossing more valuable than 5 parking spaces?
Who wants to answer that?
I'd be curious what Mrs. Collins' comments were, if she has an answer.
I'll go ahead and enable her to speak here.
Oh, hi. I just found it curious that this all started because this was a great opportunity to add parking to the CBD, and now we're actually subtracting parking. As for the mid-block crossing, I'm just not sure. This is not a very long block. And certainly right now, there's not a lot of back and forth traffic in the middle of the block. There just isn't. So I just thought I'd raise the question, what's of more value to the CBD? The parking spaces that are lost, or this mid-block crossing? I probably would say the parking is more valuable, but that's just me. So I think everybody should kind of weigh in on that and see what they think is most critical.
Well, that's a good point. And, you know, way back when it was considered to be, or the consideration, and I know you weighed in on the one-way street idea, which was, you know, is gone away, but that added, I don't remember, Jeff, 9 parking places or 19 or quite a substantial number. And there it was kind of an easy choice. No, that additional parking was not worth the alternative of the one-way street. But, you know, you're making a good point, Mickey. I think the most confusing parking area right now is at the end of people trying to get in and out of Scranton Alley, and it's sort of a no man's land. Anybody else?
Well, the nice thing, I guess to Drew's point about the crosswalk is, you know, and I do see people, because they're parking on the north side to get to the south side. Now a lot of people, you know, are going in the other direction. They are just crossing the street as they get out of their car. You know, it's just, no one's going to walk on the sidewalk all the way down and come back to the middle. You know, I see people crossing the street all the time. So it is nice to kind of tie that together a little bit, since it seems to be a natural kind of progress for people, and maybe this helps. The idea of the parking is, I think, is just going to be a never-ending quest. No matter how much you put out there, there's always going to be a need for maybe more, sometimes less. You know, I don't know what's going to happen on Block 1 on the south side. Is that going to be permanently outdoor seating, or are we going to gain those spots back? And you know, I kind of find the pedestrian just as important as the parking. And I think this helps the pedestrian side of the town.
If I can just add, when it comes to the north side of the street and having it, there isn't a lot going on over there, but we continue to see the congestion on the south side of the street with everything from the awesome tables and the bike racks and the kids and whatever else is going on over there. It's, you know, having the access and being able to get across the street to take advantage of a clearer sidewalk for walking your dog, or when the kids actually do ride their bikes through there. Just it's another, you know, place to get across the street safely is one way of thinking about it, with the congestion, or, you know, the wanted congestion on the south side of the street.
I like Bob's comments about making sure that we cover the basics before we put all the additional things on. I wonder if it isn't time to send it back to Jody and say, here's the thoughts, here's the budget. You know, if we seem to all think that the continuous new curbs and sidewalks is pretty important, and the paving in the street. Everything else on that, and I don't know what the budget is until you got to try to live within it. And I think the budget is what, 500 to 550,000, including the engineering and designer fees.
Well, the budget is up to the board. This is not in, you know, that amount of money is not currently in the budget. If we, and Drew, maybe you can speak to that, but if we would like to present them some options to if they want to budget more money for this or not.
Yeah, and then the village board had, as part of the conversations when Jeff, the village engineer, Jeff Hansen, laid out, here are some alternatives that can be discussed. The village board, granted that some time has passed and there's new members, but I think there was general support for adding amenities to the central business district, as well as solving some existing problems like the corner in front of Envasi, like the flooding in the lack of hardscape along East Center Avenue. So that's kind of how the origins and the evolution of this, but there was general support to do additional amenities to support the business canvas, if you will, in the central business district and continue investing in the central business district, which is such a unique space and such a draw for the community and builds community, right? So you continue to invest in this area. So that's a long way of saying the village had a budget to do curb work and asphalt. There was some additional monies left over, and it's certainly not $900,000. But the idea that the closer we can get to $500,000, I think that's a number that the village can go back and look at some existing fund balances and some other projects and say, we would rather invest here than elsewhere.
Is there anything left of like the Main Street grants and things like that were around some years ago? I mean, here we got a historic district on the south side of the street. Has anybody thought about that? That's a time-consuming process, even if there is some.
It is. That kind of money has kind of dried up. Sometimes communities get some money through federally funding a share. The issue with that is if you take federal money, you have to meet federal standards. And then this project moves 3 years down the road and becomes, we don't really have the size of a project that makes all that headache worth it.
No, okay. So I think Neil's idea of sending it back to Jody, but with I think we need to have some more instructions to her.
Yeah, I mean, if you're telling me that the replacing all of the sidewalk is important, I don't need Jody for that. I mean, we have those numbers. That is something that I can come up with. Like Drew did say, that there will be, there's going to be a hole in front of, where is it? The Lawrence building, I believe, next week, because there's a gas problem. And the gas company's going to.
I didn't know that. I was just guessing.
Yes,
right, that's going to happen.
Yeah, we just got a permit to renew a service. So I mean, there will be cuts. And one, I will say, they did that older style concrete in Block 1, and that is it's hard to replace to look nice. So right now we have a situation where there's a large crack kind of going up the block, maybe 5 feet to 7 feet off the building, and the thought of trying to replace that sidewalk and make it look like the rest of it is basically the reason why it hasn't been replaced yet, because it's not going to look the same. So what looks worse, one with the same concrete with a crack in it, or a different, a newer concrete that's not going to match or will kind of match. So I like, if we want to redo it all, I think we can do that. But it will crack, it will break, there will be a gas something, and it will end up somewhat of a patchwork. If you look at what Innovasi did when they made their new entrance, I think that was 4 or 5 years ago, they poured all that new sidewalk right in this area. I don't know, I guess I stopped noticing it after a little while, but we can certainly prioritize replacing more of the sidewalk if that's what the group's thoughts are.
The other, I guess, baggage with replacing, in addition to the cost, is the practical of disturbing the businesses that much more. The idea that when you're that's going to cause greater interruption for a greater period of time. Or unless I'm wrong, is that wrong, Jeff? Or
the more we have to do in front of the front doors of businesses, obviously that's hard to do and hard to keep them happy. Yeah.
So I guess the practical, just the idea that it's going to be a quilt no matter what we try and how we do it. So I guess it's one of those. Why is the visual? Well, that's everybody's consensus, and that's your consensus that the base plan is the base plan, and that includes all new sidewalks.
I may push back a little bit on that. Just I do think that there is a level of excitement that we may be missing, if we focus, solely on that and not kind of bring something special to this area. I think whatever we can do to Block 1, Block 2, and then hopefully on the north side of Block 2, I think those are positive things, and probably a bigger return than having a consistent sidewalk. I appreciate that, of course, but I think people would appreciate having these more three-dimensional elements in the space than a consistent sidewalk. That's kind of my take on it. To your point, Drew, things are going to happen no matter what at some point to the sidewalk, and you're going to start getting that patchwork. So I'm all for still trying to maintain that original vision that we're bringing something new to the CBD area. I find that very exciting for us.
So where do we go from here?
Well, again, I mean, it's like the idea that the village's original 2007 CBD streetscape plan didn't necessarily account for budget. I can tell you that much, with all that bluestone and everything. So, you know, I guess there's two different approaches that you can take. You can say, look at this and say, if money was no object, what would we want it to look like? And then the village can do what it can within the project once we go to bid and say, you know, we understand what the ABR's goals are. And at the end of the day, we can try to come as close as that we can based on how the bids come back in. And then there would be some idea that there would be prioritization of certain elements. And so the idea of this plan that everybody's looking at, this preferred concept dated April 2021, if that was done and, you know, had revised pavers or no pavers, at least the idea was, you know, that was the original concept, kind of like if money was no object, this is what we want to see happen. And then the village can come back, put it out to bid and say, this is what we can accomplish with the dollars we have today. And take it from there. And we can come back, I guess, the timing of this, Jeff, to go out to bid, you would have to go to bid, what, in June? To make this a fall project?
I would very much like to. I mean, if you push that into July, then you start losing your pool of contractors as they start filling up their late summer and fall schedule. You generally can't start within a month of awarding. So from the time you put it out to bid till somebody's digging, it's usually 2 months between the bid period, the contract, and then the contractor gearing up. So bidding in June, you're talking about, you know, starting in August at the earliest, but more likely September, and giving them September, October to do the project and button up and not be pushing the end of the asphalt season in November. It would certainly be ideal.
And so, but you also had mentioned to me at a different time about being too cute and having too many bid alternates will drive up cost and or push away interest. Yes.
Yes, if you bid the full, you know, $900,000 project, then try to make half of it alternates. Contractors are just not going to want to bite on that, and it'll get very, very hard to get good bids on each item.
Okay.
So we do need to make some prioritization, I think, before we put it out to bid.
Yeah. So I guess, Chair Hunter, to answer your question then, so I think it goes back to the basic comments that you and Member Dahlman were talking about the idea of what is in fact then the base plan, and what are the ads you would, and how would you if you had to say, this is my first choice, if I was choosing how to spend the village's money, is festoon lighting in the top 5 or is it number 10? You know, that kind of thing, kind of
Well,
putting
that
it in order.
seems to be the most expensive thing in there.
I'm sorry?
That seems to be the most expensive thing in the budget. You know, I think there's some other areas to look at, and it's been mentioned, is the idea of the landscaped areas. You know, it's nice to look at all the flowers and stuff, but you know, I think Jeff's idea of $10,000 on maintenance is probably twice that. Plus, you know, we are the village of multiple dogs now, and if the more places there are for dogs to stop, the more places they will do that. Some owners are good, some owners are not so good. They're a lot better than they used to be. But the maintenance becomes really a major issue. And, you know, so far, all the pots that you see uptown are done by the garden club. they're not going to maintain the whole village. Having participated in that for about 30 years, it's a lot of work. We got to be careful what we would like to see versus what we can actually see.
One thing I haven't heard really any comments on was expanding the sidewalk here in front of the other door and the clockworks and fixing the drainage. I guess the staff kind of considered that one of the more important items, along with just establishing the bump outs and the geometry, as we've seen. I mean, is that agreeable?
That's always kind of muddy there. I think that has gotten lost in the shuffle. And that's you're right, Jeff. That's important.
And again, the plan there, at least my plan was just to add new sidewalk west of the existing and replace broken existing. But again, if that's the consensus that we should rip it all out and replace it, then I guess that'd be good information for me to have as well.
I have to admit, I haven't walked the sidewalk looking for all those defects or non-defects.
As you get up by Innovasi, there's quite a few cracks. The area by the clockworks and the other door and twigs is not bad at all.
You know, I think somebody needs to answer Mickey's question. Maybe that's already been answered by the fact that we are where we are. But I'm sure that when this becomes more public, it's going to come up. Like parking comes up all the time. And I remember Drew's comment to me a long time ago was parking is a convenience, not it's convenience parking. We got plenty of parking.
There's no shortage of parking. There's only a shortage of convenient parking.
Yeah, that's right. Anybody else got any thoughts that we can leave here?
Well, I think the biggest thing we need to come to terms with is if we're asking them to replace all the sidewalks first.
Well,
Right.
and everybody brings up the point that that's good for maybe the first 6 months.
Yeah.
And then they re-roof something, and now you got globs of tar in the sidewalk that never go away, or
Right.
gas main breaks, or whatever.
I think we're being optimistic on 6 months.
I will say, when it comes to bidding it, sidewalk is probably an easier thing because you can always add quantity, and we're going to have a quantity of sidewalk that will get us, I think, a good price no matter what. So if we do get good bids, I don't have to worry about having an alternate to replace twice as much sidewalk. We can replace as much as the budget allows if that's what we want to do once we see the numbers.
And I very much like the idea of replacing all the sidewalk, but I do recognize that I can remember when I was up in Ann Arbor doing a major street repair where we paved the whole thing. The day after we paved it, there was a water problem and we had to dig it up. Just incredible. But the idea of it becoming patchwork is, I don't care what you do with the sidewalk or the street, it's going to happen over time. But the first 5 or 6 or 7 years, it's going to look very presentable. Then it's going to go gradual. And by the time you replace it, I don't know how long it's been since these sidewalks have been poured, but I'll bet they've been there for 30 or 40 years. So if we get 40 years out of these sidewalks, you got to think that after 10 or 20 years, they're going to start looking like patchwork. But at least you get 10 really good years out of it. And I agree with Jeff with his comments that number one, if you do a straightforward job all the way through and put more of it up for bids, number one, you'll get it at a better price, and number two, contractors don't like to bid alternates.
Jeff, just if you can guesstimate, I'm just thinking about the amount of concrete in, let's say, the corner circle where the dancers are right now. That looks to me like it's a pretty big hunk of concrete.
Yeah, I measured that earlier today, and now I am, well, maybe I wrote it down. I think it was about 800 square feet of new walk, south side. I measured that about 750 square feet. The additions in Center Avenue were another 1,000 square feet.
I'm just thinking about a circle of concrete that is 750 square feet. That's pretty damn big.
And that's where I think we're talking about the score patterns to kind
Yeah.
of make it look, break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I will say that's just Jody putting tables in that area.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing that says that we have to have, whatever that is, 9, 12 tables in that area.
Maybe it should be a smaller area. Is that what you're getting at, Bob?
No, I'm just thinking of what it would look like just as concrete. You can do a lot of things with concrete, but each one of those things you do, you create a creative score pattern, and all of a sudden those are saw joints, not not pieces with fiberboard between them or caulk.
And also most sidewalks,
I brush them a different way, but that takes somebody that knows what they're doing and somebody that has specified, you brush this one this way and this one that way. So you create patterns that way. Lots of things you can do, but none of it is just flat work.
yeah, that's right. And a lot of sidewalk construction is not really done well. They don't put an adequate base in, they don't compact it. And when you do that, you're going to get cracks where you don't want them.
Can I, Chair Hunter, I'm going to try to see if I can guesstimate consensus.
Good luck. Let me know.
Yeah, I guess if not, the general layout of this preferred concept, there seems to be consensus with the bump outs, with the work along East Center Avenue, and the only question mark is the mid-block crossing. Although if I had to dial it in, it seems like there's more people supporting it than not supporting it. But that's just, again, I'm picking up signals and tea leaves from a digital world, so I could be impaired. But that's kind of what I'm picking up on.
Yes?
I don't know. I've got mixed support on the lighting, especially.
We're not at the lighting yet. Just the geometry of the footprint of all the bump
Okay.
outs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would make a minor adjustment to the south side at the crossover. Not make it quite so wide.
So narrow up the Scranton Alley mid-block crossing where it marries to the paint.
Well, no, I wouldn't narrow it that much. No, I would just if where Jody's got a tree.
Yeah.
I don't see it needs to go out that way. The other way is the geometry of the parking. But then everything else is the dimension of the Scranton Alley, whatever that is. It's got to be like 12 feet, 15 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think maybe we could take that tree out and get a parking stall back, perhaps?
I don't know if you can get one back. It'd be nice if you could.
Okay.
But then it's clearly the bump out is where you cross the street or enter the alley. Everybody's going into Scranton Alley these days. It's the most popular place in town.
Jeff, I mean, I'm trying to think, is there an engineering reason why that's a 90-degree right there?
Out here?
Yes, sir.
I think she's making room for the tree, trying to match this curve to this curve, these seat walls, and then putting the tree in. I don't.
Well, Drew, let me answer that because she had it at an angle.
Yeah.
If you go down and look at the one down in front of Bluffington's, I think that's at an angle, and the snowplows hit it all the time. And so, and it just looks better as being sort of orthogonal as opposed to diagonal.
So being symmetrical with its eastern partner?
Well, in a way, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
And a snowplow's going to hit those things anyway.
Yes, our perfect concrete curbs, they would definitely be chipped.
Yeah, I think you
2
should
years.
maybe make them out of big rubber things.
Yeah.
They're a whole new trend.
So with that one minor adjustment, assuming that there's no heartburn with that, and maybe there's a stall picked up, that would solve the geometry issue. And that this body would be recommending to the village board to choose pedestrians over an autocentric world. Yeah. And that's fine if that's your recommendation. I mean, that's fine.
Okay, so now let me throw another wrinkle in here.
No.
Where's the electric car charging stations?
You know what? The village has done other things to incentivize that, and one of the things they've talked about is not have those in yet, but that'll probably be in the Walnut lot someday soon, or in front of the public safety building. Okay, so that's one, geometry. That's a good one. That's good. That's consensus. All right, so concrete, it sounds like we can bid it and then just add quantities and then maybe make a decision once we get some numbers in.
So we can always add quantity. When you want to cut a quantity in half, that's when they get to rebid.
I don't know where you'd add quantity.
Well, I'd say if we bid it as without full replacement, and then we feel like we can afford to do full replacement, and then we can add quantity.
So can you bid it on a unit price?
Yes, it'll be bid by the square foot of new concrete.
Yeah. So then you kind of replace what you need to.
So are you intending to present this drawing as it is to the village board?
What I think what we'd do would be to modify the drawing based off tonight's conversation and then present that to the village board.
Because if the example I was just thinking of is if we're going to be taking out all the brick paving, I wouldn't show this drawing to them because it'll just confuse them. It can
Agreed.
Don't show them they can't have.
Yeah.
You know that.
Agreed. Okay.
And can I just make a mention on the concrete?
Please.
Is there anything for the scoring or anything on the, any decorative? I'm not a big, for our town, I'm not a big proponent for it. I don't think it fits in with the architecture. I don't think we need to do, and I don't know if that's part of this, I see a line item, but I don't know if that's indicated on any of our drawings. I guess I don't see the big benefit of that in our town. I just think a simple sidewalk is just as nice. We don't need all the bells and whistles. We have very beautiful buildings. I don't think we need to compete with, just as beautiful sidewalk if it saves us money.
Matt, I think what we had in mind there is just ordinary colored concrete, but to have a score line that related to features in the streetscape, like perhaps the festoon lighting lines, if we did that,
Yeah.
or more generally the kind of through pedestrian path down the middle of the sidewalk versus the way things are used out towards the edges.
Right. I see a $83,000 budget for scored concrete walk. I don't know.
So that really the scoring. You look at that. That's $8 a square foot. That's I think we might get $7 a square foot if we didn't ask it for scored, or $7.50. I don't think the scoring itself is a huge cost driver in that item.
Okay.
We need some sort of joint pattern.
For sure. So we're not trying to create this. I just want to make sure that's not the driver of the cost, is creating some.
Yeah.
It's just part of the control joints.
It'll be an item in the spec, and it'll be just a point of emphasis during construction that we make it look nice, and we'll have to agree on what that pattern should be.
That's not to make like a pinwheel design or something like that. I think that's what Member Kerouac's saying. We don't want to do that.
Yeah, I don't think our town needs that. It's,
Well, part of the problem I had with the concrete on Block 1 is that they were poured in, the sections are way too large.
Yes, agreed.
That leads to the concrete cracking and breaking up.
Yes, wholeheartedly agree on that. The anything more than like even the stuff on Block 2 right now, some of it is 9 by 9 basically in those panels. That seems awfully large.
Oh, that's too big.
What are the pads up there now?
I think it depends where you're standing. Jeff?
Oh, really?
Jeff,
Yeah, I think some of them are about 9 feet wide. Actually, no, maybe it's 6 feet wide. I was pacing that out today too, by about 9 feet long. So they're large. They're not as large as the ones in Block 1. Well, I should say the ones that are not been quilted already are large. There are a few that have been cut and made smaller because it is a lot to replace even one of those giant squares. It gets very expensive, and they are more prone to cracking.
Yeah, if it was my first,
Crack.
if it was my first when I pour concrete, I'd try to keep the sections down to absolutely no bigger than 4 feet.
I was going to suggest 5 feet, just perpendicular to the buildings all the way down the sidewalk. That creates a pattern all by itself. That's the old boardwalk on a larger scale.
Most of our standard sidewalks in town are 5-foot squares.
5 foot, right. I'm talking about just 5 foot all the way across. Maybe that's too far. Anyway, we don't need to get into the weeds on that yet, but I think when you're bidding something, it's nice to if you don't tell them, they won't do it.
Yeah, no, it will definitely have to be in the spec. We'll have to come up with a design.
And I agree with Matt. It doesn't have to be something funky. It's just something that's
rational and small, right? So not to be massive so that we have the Block 1 issue again.
yeah.
Yeah. So again, all right, so all this is assuming also that no brick pavers is part. Is that consensus on that as well? I'm saying nodding.
yeah, I agree with no brick pavers. I think.
Okay, masonry seat walls, Jeff, in terms of bidding that, I sense from Chair Hunter that there's a desire to have masonry seat walls over benches. Is that correct? Is that a universal desire?
Let me just mention why I say that. And I know everybody's been down there, but when Highland Park redid their central area, and it's like they put every kind of piece of furniture, including benches, around trees everywhere that they had in the catalog. And I think that was actually Tesca that did that probably 25 years ago. But anyway, it just starts to look like, hey, this all came out of a catalog. The benches where they are, I think are pretty nice. I don't mean the benches, the seat walls, they sort of define the area. They give a sense of place, really. Some of the other benches scattered around, maybe.
Jeff, I mean, in terms of bidding that as an alternate, is that something that's, is that getting too cute or no?
It might not be, but I would want to know what is the alternate to the seat walls then? Are we going to pour concrete slabs and bolt benches like we have elsewhere in the CBD? Or, if you're talking about masonry seat wall or not, that's $50,000. But if it's, X or Y, then I want to know how much Y costs before we, decide to, concede something here and then have something that's not as good, but maybe costs, 75% as much.
I don't see all those that many seat walls. I just see them at the main corner.
1, 2, 3 here. There's one stuck in here. Yeah, 1, 2. Looks like a third one here at the mid-block crossing. And
Okay. I'm going to go back and say the only ones we really need, it would be nice to have, are the ones at the corner there.
This corner here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the other ones are just placeholders for
Yeah.
who knows what.
Yeah, and they're actually, I think they're organized wrong. They're more of a convex, or it's
Yeah, but they make a lot of sense in sort of confining the space on the corner. It's
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
it's nice vertical relief, even though it's only like 18 inches tall.
So you say the corner, you mean just this one corner?
That
here?
one, right? Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
That's my opinion. But the other benches, they're like you say, you buy them and you bolt them in. You don't need to do that right now.
And actually, maybe I misread her drawing. This does say curved bench pointing to this spot. Yeah, and this spot here as well. Some of these aren't as defined, but maybe she did intend these just to be curved benches in these other locations. I can't see another note that says masonry seat wall.
Bob, the other spot I'd consider adding a bench, whether it's a seat wall or a bench, is by the post office.
By the post office?
Yeah. There's one, that Jeff, that you pointed out that's up there.
One way up here, just off this page, and one over here. I think those were curved benches. Now that I
don't
my
care if
face
they're
right up
curved
to my
bench.
screen. Yeah.
I don't have a big hang up on curved benches versus some other kind of bench. I do have a hang up that people should have when you get shoppers and customers and people walking around. They should have a choice to sit where they want to. And I see a lot of people at the post office.
That's true.
The original quote has 52 linear feet of masonry seat bench, or seat wall. And I don't think that that's just where in Avasi, that's not 52 feet worth there, is it? Or am I not understanding what linear feet?
I think you're right.
So there's something needs to be, I agree. I like the masonry seat walls. I would like all of them to be masonry seat walls, or come up with a better way of organizing them. I like the idea of them, but if we had to limit it, having them just at the corner by Innovasi there to start off with, and possibly adding them in other parts of Block 1, or on the north side of the street, or down by Bluffington's too, might be a good opportunity. But I think we need to double check those quantities to make sure we understand where we have masonry seat walls versus curved benches, and what that quote actually looks like. How many linear feet do we have there on the corner? Maybe there's an opportunity to add one more curved bench, masonry seat wall somewhere else.
In looking at her quantities, she has 6 benches. I think I found the 6 benches. I think this is the only spot right now that she's showing the seat walls. This could be approaching 20 feet long, these two. It's hard to get the exact scale. This isn't a scale drawing, but those do look, this is a pretty big corner here. I don't know, maybe the number's not exactly 52, but as I relook at this drawing even closer, I do think this is the only place that they are called out, is on that corner. It doesn't mean we can't add them elsewhere, but I think that's what this drawing is showing.
Okay, thank you.
Well, maybe you have the ones on the corner here. I keep wanting to point at this. The ones on the corner is base, and some other ones is alternates.
Yeah.
But we're ahead of ourselves now.
No, you're doing great.
And if we can come out of this meeting with, a 95% plan, we can start getting stuff ready to bid. We can always tweak, some finer details as we get closer to bidding, or even after bidding, if it's just a quantity change.
Is there something to do with the trees that we should be talking about?
She's showing 3 new trees. One is here. One is here.
I think that number's down to 2.
I don't remember. I don't remember if there was a 3rd new tree. There's 3 in the quantity.
And we're doing tree grades, right?
Oh, there's a new tree here in the mid block too. So she's got 1 here, one here, and one here with no tree grates. And the discussion there was, to do one-offs on tree grates and have them not match would be inconsistent and wouldn't look good. And people did not want to sacrifice all the trees on the blocks to go to a consistent look with tree grates.
Okay. No, I agree with that.
So now I think the next item is I think the general guidance on the plantings is simplicity and low maintenance, but planting, right? And we can talk to Jody about that.
So let me ask you a question, Drew. Right now, there's, I don't know, 50 or 60 pots around the, block 1 and part of block 2 and
Throughout the central business district, yeah.
Yeah, they all get planted 4 times a year. So what happens to those? Do they stay there?
Yeah, I think that was, we talked about that they would stay.
Okay. Because there's plenty of flowers up there right now.
Yeah. And then it comes down to the festoon lighting question.
I like the festoon lighting, but if it's going to be a budget buster, I would take them out.
Well, maybe that's enough direction. Is that the idea is liking it in the locations shown, and if it's is it the last improvement in?
Are you okay if I don't go so I can finish making beds and stuff?
You know what, though? Let me just make a comment on the festoon lighting. I think if we all like the stuff that goes from the sidewalk to the building, and we could incorporate something on the corner that was just maybe 2 strands that went from Innovasi's old door out, or out to one of those posts. It's the precursor for what we could do, as I think Matt mentioned a long time ago. Down on block 1, without a great deal of effort other than. Does it make any sense? Anybody there?
We're here. Jeff, are you getting ready to highlight something?
No, I was trying to move my cursor, but I would just mention, Bob, that we would need permission from the building owners to put those in. We do not.
Oh, right. Yeah,
I haven't talked to them yet about that.
Yeah. But for now, it's a conceptual idea, and you're obviously going to do that if everybody agrees to do that, some portion of it.
I like the idea of having it be the last item and minimizing it to reduce the quantities and the overall cost.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, can you hear me? I had to switch to my phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I still am a champion for the festoon lighting. I think it would, it's very successful in Scranton Alley. I think it adds something, and I think it would bring something nice to the main streets. So I would fight for it as much as I could, understanding that it is a want and not a need. But I'm a big proponent for that for the village.
Thank you for that. Any other?
Probably later. Is that enough to go on, guys?
I think so. Jeff, you agree?
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, we're good. This is productive. Thank you. Although it felt a little bit like going to the dentist for a little while. I think it was good.
I went to the dentist this morning, so this started the day and ended the day.
More the same, more the same. Well, thank you, everybody.
Okay. So what's the next, what are we going to see next and when? This has got to be on the fast track, right?
So, yeah, so we're going to go back and we'll talk to Jody at Tesca and revise these and work out a bid plan and share it with the village board and saying this is the direction we're heading, because we're going to have to find some money to do this and get comfort going into that and blessing that going out for bid. And so that's the next step.
Do we, or should we, I mean, I'd like to see this again before you take it to the board if we could. But I guess my next question is, when are we going to be able to go back into this, get rid of the Zoom stuff? Have they decided yet?
Not 100, but very soon is the answer. The village board has started meeting hybrid, on a hybrid basis, where when everybody is vaccinated, they're meeting in person, with the exception of a few folks that are still getting their final second dose and so forth. So the most recent CDC rulings from last week are still, I guess, unfolding in terms of how is that actually hitting operations of various organizations to include the village. We are having a conversation internally about how we're going to handle that, knowing about our staff's level of vaccinations and the various buildings that we operate, and then also how we interface with the public and how it's very difficult to administer because nobody's walking around with, the V sweater saying, hey, I'm vaccinated. So it's very difficult to plan for all those contingencies without having some hiccups here and there. But some people are relying on the honor system. But anyway, the answer is change is afoot, Mr. Hunter.
It would be so much more productive to be able to do this in person. We're doing pretty good considering. But
yeah. Well, and I think what's going to happen is that you're going to see a hybrid arrangement for the foreseeable future, right? There'll be people, and we have the technology in the village boardroom that, we can have 3 members present and 2 members, are at home for various reasons. I mean, as long as the governor's orders allows us to have these meetings take place in this manner, which I suspect they will for some period of time as we continue to transition and vaccinations continue or not continue, that it's evolving. But I think that you'll see a hybrid environment for at least probably this calendar year, if I had to guess.
Boy, I was done in February.
Yeah. Some people like it, right? It makes it very easy to participate. It's easy to share drawings. And people can do it from their couch, right? It's convenient.
Well, it's what we're stuck with right now. Okay.
Sure. For sure.
So, anything else?
No, sir.
Anybody else got any comments? Reflections? Thoughts?
I move we adjourn.
You what? You move we adjourn?
Yeah.
I second that.
All right. Do we need to take a vote on that?
Yes, but it doesn't have to be roll call. It can just be a voice
Okay.
vote.
So we got all right. All in favor of adjournment? Let's say hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, then we're done.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Drew.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.